Broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Good morning. This is Julia Talbot at the Department of Family and Support Services, and we are today going to thank you for joining us for a webinar for the Chicago Youth Service Corps RFP. Just a few housekeeping events that we're going to do. It will be, I have everybody on mute, and now I'm trying to get my slideshow to resume so I can get you to the right screen. Come on. I have everybody, due to the volume of participants, everybody has been placed on mute. I'm going to ask everyone to please submit questions via the question box, and we will respond to the questions after going through the slides. And let's see if I can't. I see that I am still not, my screen is not working correctly. Let's see if I can stop my slideshow and just go this. Now, I've done many things, but apparently doing the slideshow is not one of them. Here we go. Let's do from the beginning. We're going to go to the current slide. This was working just a few moments ago. Let's see. Look at that. And let's see. I am going to introduce my co-webinar hosts, Evelyn Benitez and Lisa Davis of the youth unit, and they are going to be the people who are going to be telling you about today's opportunity, specifically the introductions, the scope, the selection criteria, and our timeline. I will then jump in to talk about how to manage our beautiful e-procurement system. But first, I think I'm going to just close out on this and try to figure out what's the matter. Let's open my PowerPoint again. Go to this. Let's go to the slideshow. And from the beginning, let's see if I can get it to work correctly. No. So it was working fine when we were, oh, here we go. Perfect. Let me make sure I'm showing the right screen. There we go. I think we're good. All right. Sorry about that. Moving right along. Frozen again. Interesting. Not that interesting, though. All right. All right, here we are with the agenda. Now I'm going to introduce my co-attendees. Hopefully this won't be so glitchy. Sorry about that. And we're going to go forward. Lisa Davis is our Director of Youth Employment for the city. I'm going to hand this over to her now. Lisa, are you ready?
I am. Can you hear me?
All right, let's go through the agenda and purpose of the RFP. Yeah, I don't know why this is not forwarding. Are you on the agenda page?
I see the agenda page.
I don't have any idea why this is being so glitchy. It's really quite annoying since we did actually practice this. I think I'm going to just go to the screen of my main monitor. Are you now seeing the purpose of the RFP page?
I am.
Right. Well, you know, this is better than wasting people's time trying to get this thing to work correctly. Let us go forward with this very unprofessional looking screen.
Fantastic. Either way, thank you so much, Julia. And good morning, everyone. As Julia Talbot said, I am Lisa Davis, the Director of Youth Employment with the Department of Family and Support Services. And I have with me my team member, Evelyn Benitez, the Youth Service Coordinator for the Youth Employment Program. Good morning. So let's get started. So the purpose of the RFP, DFSS is seeking to fund agencies who have experience with programming for youth ages 16 to 24 that is focused on leadership development through civic engagement, service learning projects. CYSC, also known as Chicago Youth Service Corps, RFP seeks to support youth development in the city of Chicago by developing young Chicagoans as local leaders through the creation of paid service learning opportunities focused again on local and civic engagement. The participants will earn money in a diverse service corps while also building transferable leadership skills for workforce development and a 21st century skill building. The model aspires to promote safe and vibrant communities by empowering youth through civic-minded service while duly providing employment. Next slide, please. I do want to reiterate, excuse me, that if you have any questions, please put it in the chat. We will respond to the questions at the end of the webinar. And yes, the PowerPoint will be available. And I do see several have already taken that opportunity to put your questions in the chat. Fantastic. So back to the webinar. So the background of CYSC, it began in the summer of 2020. Young Chicagoans could earn money while supporting their neighborhood and city during the COVID pandemic. Offered community service opportunities and project-based online learning focused on social justice and/or COVID-19 concerns. The inaugural year of the CYSC demonstrated the necessity of an opportunity such as this to support young Chicagoans as they power through this pandemic by serving their neighborhood and the city. The Chicago Youth Service Corps has guiding principles. There are 6 guiding principles. I'm going to pause a second so you can see and read through the principles, and we will also address those principles again later in the webinar. Next slide, please. Continuing on the background, just a few prior statistics based on our 2020 cohorts. The youth has stated personal growth. About 82% of the participants reported they learned how their peers' backgrounds are the same or different from their own through project collaboration and developing new relationships. 83% of participants reported that they were able to strengthen their skills, abilities, and even gain new skills. Stronger sense of community responsibility will also positively impact the city at large. The background, it was a 6-week program. 83 of the inaugural 1,809 participants, that is how many participants we had for the summer, have a positive impact on their community in the summer of 2020. Next slide, please. The program description and the goals. The goal of the program is to support youth development in the city by developing young Chicagoans ages 16 through 24 as local leaders through the creation of paid, you notice I keep stressing how this is paid, this is under the Youth Employment Program, creation of paid service learning opportunities focused on local and civic engagement. Youth participants will earn money in a diverse service corps while also building these transferable skills. This model aspires to promote safe and vibrant communities by empowering young people through civic-minded service while duly providing employment. Next slide, please. The current state of the program and the priorities for improvement. The current state: after the summer, DFSS expanded the initiative through the fall of 21. This with four additional 12-week cohorts. This allowed for the extended engagement of approximately 5,000 additional youth. The COVID-19 pandemic posed a variety of opportunities and challenges for the model. It was because of the pandemic that the city and DFSS developed the Chicago Youth Service Corps as a virtual option for youth employment through collaboration with existing agencies. After a 90-day planning period, the Service Corps became a viable option for the dual purpose of community engagement and employment. Programmatic activities were predominantly virtual and followed either a 6 or 12-week program model. Activities and projects were unique to each agency's expertise, but were united by virtual events, weekly reflections, core conversations, and capstone presentations that were grounded in those 6 principles mentioned earlier. Next slide. The priorities for improvement: expand the program timeline. This will be a year-round funding from January to December. In-person programming. Programming is expected to be in person, but may need to transition to virtual or hybrid based on the CDC guidance and on the data provided by the Department of Public Health. Another priority for improvement: our Healthy Chicago Equity Zone. To ensure citywide access to programming, respondents must indicate for which Healthy Chicago Equity Zone they will be applying for. This is in alignment with the Chicago Department of Public Health, the Healthy Chicago Equity Zone. There are 6: North Central, Southwest, West, Far South, Near South, and Southwest. We will go further into that as the webinar continues. At least 1 respondent per city zone will be awarded. You must have a physical address in each zone you apply for. Transformative impact is part of our priorities of improvement. To increase staff capacity by providing a youth coordinator and a leadership coach for each cohort of 20. So that means your staff to youth ratio is 2 to 20. Next slide, please. Our target populations. The eligibility for the program, again, youth ages 16 to 24, They must show proof of Chicago residency, have a valid CPS or state ID card, completed the CYSC online application, and have a signed consent form from the parent or guardian if the youth is under the age of 18. Now let's remember, this is considered an employment program. So youth will need to have the appropriate documentations to complete the I-9 form. The recruitment and enrollment. The respondents are responsible for recruiting the youth in their programs. 60% of the enrolled youth will be recruited and chosen by you. The other 40% that will be enrolled will be selected randomly through the lottery from the citywide application portal. So you choose the 60%, and they must have those required paperwork that was mentioned. And the 40% will come from the application on a lottery. So the target population that we're looking to serve is out of the total enrolled youth recruited by either the agency or the lottery, at least 40% of those youth participants must identify with at least one of the following underrepresented populations that are outlined below. I'm going to pause so you can read that over. Next slide, please. Program requirements. Department of Family and Support Services is seeking providers with a proven track record in implementing youth development programs, skills training initiatives, workforce development, or service learning opportunities focused on local and civic engagement. The department asks agencies to design and deliver a year-round program with a focus, again, on leadership training and education, project design, planning, and implementation, critical reflection, relationship building. For the fiscal year of 2022, understanding that the program will not be from January to December of 22, we are anticipating a start of April to December 22. Program will be implemented from April through December. Programming in subsequent years will be implemented year-round, meaning January to December. Again, the requirements, the youth age, the minimum number of youth served is 40. 40 youth per year. Recruitment, again, 40% participants identified with at least one of the targets comes from you. The 60, oh, wait a minute. I'm sorry. Please forgive me. And one would think I'd be really good at this since I'm reading. Let's go back to recruitment. 40% of the entire group, 40% of all of the youth that are in the program, 40% of them will be from the target population, with at least one of those target populations that we reference. The program schedule, again, year-round programming. Budget categories that will cover the youth wages, the staff wages, transportation, food, materials, supplies, and admin. You will see a breakdown of that later on in the webinar. The youth wages for 2022 will be $15 per hour with an allocation of 460 hours in the year. You will also see that broken down. The staff wages, which are the youth coordinator and the leadership coach, is $23.50 per hour with an allocation of 770 hours in the fiscal year. Next slide, please. Program requirements. There are 4 key respondent functions. Those 4 keys are administer and support year-round programming, facilitate and implement all programmatic activities in order to promote leadership development, recruit, hire, and manage staff personnel, and administer payroll for youth participants and staff. We are going to go one by one on these key respondents. Next slide, please. The first key respondent, administer and support year-round programming for youth participants. You will develop and implement an outreach and recruitment plan to identify and enroll the eligible participants. 2, programming should be in person. We understand that it may transition to virtual hybrid format based on the CDC guidelines. And 3, track and submit data in the DFSS data management system. The second key requirement, facilitate and implement all programmatic activities in order to promote leadership development and enhance 21st century employment skills of youth participants. So you will design, plan, and implement service-based projects, programming grounded in the CYSC guiding principles. All programming leads to a final capstone project. Activities could include training and educational activities, local civic engagement projects that provide a service to benefit the city, critical reflection through ongoing reflections and/or group discussions, relationship building, opportunities to build leadership skills and meaningful relationships with their peers, staff, and community. Utilization of the digital learning platform. That is the MyShy, My Future platform. This is the platform that will be used throughout the program, the year-round program. Next slide, please. Number 3, recruit, hire, manage staff personnel. Again, the staff to youth ratio, 2 to 20. That's a leadership coach and the youth coordinator, with 1 youth coordinator and 1 coach for every 20 participants. All staff working with youth must be properly trained and have a cleared background check on file with their delegate agency. Administer payroll for youth coordinator and coach. Applicants must submit job descriptions for the youth coordinator and the coach. Number 4, administer payroll for youth participants and staff. Your participants will see wages up to 460 hours, $15 per hour. This is not to exceed $7,659. You are to collect the timesheets and record the payroll system and record it in the payroll system. You're to pay the participants bi-weekly. You should maintain time and payroll documents. Youth wages must be directly paid by the agency or the fiscal agent and are included as part of the proposed budget. We will award contracts at the rate of $505,427. That's wages for 40 youth with the 2 staff. Should respondents apply for more than the minimum of 40 youth, which is very much so possible, they can plan to increase their budget in increments of approximately $247,000 for each increment of 20 youth and 2 staff members. So you need to have a minimum of 40 youth. Go back one, please. You need to have a minimum of 40 youth with the 2 staff members. And as you go up in your increments, you can go up by 20. Next slide, please. This is a breakdown of the budget. So, if you look at this budget, and we'll start at the top, underneath CYSC budget allocation for 40 youth. It has the youth and the staff, which are the participants, the coordinator, the coach. Then the quantity. So as stated, you have 40 youth. The wages, which will include FICA and workers' comp. And we know that rate varies depending on the agencies and the size. So they're basically getting paid $16.65 an hour. Their hours per year, 460. Then it brings the total cost. And the same layout with the coordinators. That should include the FICA and workers' comp. Moving down below, you have the miscellaneous, the food, supplies, transportation, and 15% of the total budget is the administrative fee. So here we're breaking down, if you recall, we had said the youth will be working a total for that year, 460 hours. This chart gives you an idea of how that breakdown is. We're going to do the blue side of the chart with the youth. So January through May, the youth are working for 20 weeks at 10 hours per week. January through May, 10 hours per week. We understand the young people may be in school, and it's not easy for them to do more than 10 hours from the surveys that we have put out in 2020 and 21. So after May, that's when everyone else starts to do One Summer Chicago. While all the other youth are working 20 hours a week for 6 weeks, your youth will be doing the same. We did not want to compete with the other programs under One Summer Chicago. So during June to August, your youth are working for 6 weeks, 20 hours per week. After One Summer Chicago is done, from September to December, which are 14 weeks, they go back to the 10 hours per week. Then you'll see in the green the layout for the staff. Next slide, please. 1 second, sorry. The performance goals and outcomes. So these are percentages that we are targeting. We want our respondents that are awarded to reach these percentages. Growth in civic engagement, 75% of the youth participants will report a growth in civic-minded attitudes and behaviors through a designated tool that we will provide. Growth in leadership and personal development, 75%. 90% of the youth will complete the leadership and personal development tasks and playlists that will be under the My Shine, My Future online learning platform. Continuity of support. 100% of the youth will be connected with additional information, support, or services if identified and requested during programming. I do believe we go further into the continuity of support and how we are listing that so that it makes it possible to reach that 100%. And then your outputs are the bullets below. I will pause for a minute for you to read that. Next slide, please. The guidance for respondents. Earlier, we mentioned about the Healthy Chicago Equity Zone. As stated, there are 6 equity zones. If you look at the map on this slide, it is broken up into 6 zones. This is what we call a heat map, and the heat map is from last year's applicants that are over the age of 16. Within each zone, there are community areas listed. Then you have the colors. The darker the color, the more applicants that apply for One Summer Chicago that are over the age of 16. This will be relevant as you look in the next slides to come. So the respondent must submit 1 application for each equity zone that you wish to apply for. The respondent can only apply for an equity zone in which you can demonstrate there's an actual physical address. Multiple applications by the same agency for the same zone will not be considered. I'm going to give an example. This agency is called Lisa Davis. Lisa Davis decided, I'm going to submit an application in, let's see if I know my Chicago map, an application in Pullman, Hedgewood, and Beverly. I cannot, because all 3 of those are in the same zone. I can only choose one of those. We're going to go further into that in a few other slides. So respondents seeking funding for multiple sites in different zones are required to apply for each zone separately. Back to the example. Agency Lisa realized her mistake and said, oh no, I will apply for 3 zones. I will have, or I have, a physical address in each of those 3 zones, whether it is through a partner that I have an agreement, a memorandum of understanding with, and I'm going to use them in another zone, but I'm going to apply for 3 zones. But what I have to do is submit 3 separate application for each zone. Next slide, please. Here is what we call in our office, a cheat sheet. It has the 6 zones and it tells you each community area that is in each zone. So for instance, in the far south, Beverly, you will only see Beverly in that zone. There is no overlap. Next slide, please. The anticipated range of awards. The table that you see here, again, we broke down the Healthy Chicago zones. And this information is from our 2021 application. And it's for the ages 16 to 24. This here shows you the percentage of youth that applied in each of those zones. Now we are anticipating for a year-round program, we're anticipating serving a target of 880 youth. This gives somewhat of an idea of how we will lay that out. How many youth we're considering from each zone. And this is to help you in understanding why some zones have 80, some zones have 240, because of the percentage that we averaged out from previous applicants. To ensure geographic equity, the distribution of funds will be balanced by youth population needs as demonstrated by historical data from our One Summer Chicago application in 21. Respondents are encouraged, please, to collaborate in order to allow agencies to subcontract and expand an organization's network to deliver programming. Next slide, please. The selection criteria. The strength of proposed programs. We seek respondents that demonstrate clearly defined activities, projects, and services to be provided that are appropriate to addressing needs of and achieving desired outcomes for the target population, as well as the needs of the local community, equity zone, and/or the city. The respondent's proposed program is supported by an evidence base of similar civic engagement, service learning program, and/or aligns with best practice for youth development. The respondent demonstrates a clear understanding of the target population, their needs and challenges, and the local community and evidence prior experience serving the population. The respondent has an effective approach to identifying and retaining youth participants, as well as youth from the target population. The respondent has an effective approach soliciting and incorporating feedback for the purposes of programmatic improvement. Don't move, Julia, sorry. So for this particular strength of proposed program, this criteria is worth 45 points. Next slide, please. Selection criteria, program performance, outcomes, and quality. DFSS seeks respondents that demonstrate evidence of strong past performance in similar relevant youth programs against desired outcome goals and programmatic matrix, and/or other notable accomplishments in providing services to youth participants. Has the relevant systems and processes needed to track and report performance on program outcomes. Has experience using data to inform, improve its services or practices. And has the relevant systems and processes needed to collect and store key participant and performance data. This section of the criteria is worth 20 points. The organizational capacity. We are seeking respondents that demonstrate the relevant capabilities and/or infrastructure needed to manage the program. They have expertise working with the target population and has relevant capabilities and/or infrastructure needed to serve the group. They have articulated a plan to hire and train qualified staff and has or can hire qualified staff responsible for program oversight and management. Has adequate systems and processes to support monitoring program expenditures and fiscal controls. And lastly, organization reflects and engages the diverse people of the communities it serves. This section of criteria is worth 20 points. Selection criteria: reasonable cost, budget justification, and leverage of funds. The department seeks respondents that demonstrate the fiscal capacity to implement the proposed program. They're able to leverage other funds and/or in-kind contributions to support total program and administrative costs. The respondents demonstrate reasonable implementation costs and funding requests relative to its financial and human resources. The proposed budget supports the proposed scope of work or work plan. This criteria is worth 15 points. Next slide. The attachments. Please be sure to attach the job description for the leadership coach and the youth coordinator. Attach your organization's budget for this program, which will include youth and staff wages, transportation, food, material supplies, and administration. Please make sure all program requirements are addressed. Attach any linkage agreements with other CBOs, local partners, nonprofits, etc. that will support the program implementation and success. Next slide, please. Coming to the end. At least my end. Selection and transition timeline. Webinar today. Applications are due February 23rd at 12 noon. The program period begins April 1st, 2022. Next slide.
So Lisa, can you hear it? This kind of is the end. This is where we transition. So I want to thank Lisa so much for providing such thorough interpretation of this program. I know Evelyn's been on the chat in the questions, kind of answering some of the easier questions, but I just want to go through some of this e-procurement stuff really quickly before we kind of get into the deeper questions. Just to reiterate to everyone, the PowerPoint will be posted on the DFSS website, as will a link to this webinar, which is being recorded for historical purposes. Well, not really, but posterity, perhaps. The link will be posted on the DFSS website always. Also, all of the questions that are being asked in here will be, the germane ones will be included in an amendment that will be posted into the RFP application platform on e-procurement. While we talk about the deadline, applications are due on February 23rd at 12 noon. I will reiterate this a few times, but that's a hard deadline. We don't accept late applications. In fact, the only way we can accept late applications is to reopen the RFP, which we would prefer not to do, because that would require everyone who had applied to reapply, even if they didn't get in the deadline. So here is some, the e-procurement system is what we do our applications through. You access the e-procurement system through iSupplier. If you do not have an iSupplier registration or account with the City of Chicago, I suggest that you get one. It will take a couple of days to get started, so don't put it off. While we use e-procurement and iSupplier sort of interchangeably, e-procurement is the platform on which we have our applications, and we have our all of the vouchering and contract management functions. And iSupplier is the account that you control as an applicant or a vendor to interface with e-procurement. Within iSupplier, you can have multiple people, multiple accounts within your iSupplier vendor account with the city. And this becomes important when we are talking about making multiple applications. But let's just talk kind of some broad ones. I always tell people start early, save often. Register in iSupplier if you haven't already. Review the RFP narratives and application questions closely. We are going to have you use the information in the RFP for guidance in formulating your answers. All of these things are aligned. We work very hard on our scopes. The scope directly informs the application questions. The application questions are directly inform the selection criteria, and the application questions and the selection criteria are reflected in our evaluation instruments and tools. So if you have a question as to the guidance, if you're looking for guidance and a direction on which to go with for any of our programs, I very much encourage people to look at the RFP scope narratives and for guidance, and look at the selection criteria. Carefully review that selection criteria. This is what we use to evaluate your answers. Housekeeping, there's a 4,000 character limit, which includes punctuation and spaces for each response. So each question that we have, you can do 4,000 characters. The e-procurement system is not going to count those 4,000 characters. So I really, additionally, when you hit send, your application is pretty much whisked away and you won't have access to it. So I very much encourage people to do their applications in a different document that they can save, that they can count their character limits, and they can get everything, all like set up the way they want, and then you can keep a hard copy. It has happened that people, award a contract and then they're like, hey, can you send us back our application because we don't have it anymore? And it's always that's not a question I would, or a request I would feel comfortable making out of a funder. I imagine that you wouldn't either. Perhaps you should have a hard copy saved. Do not rely on e-procurement to pop up a copy of what you've done. You can, as we'll see, print out a PDF, but you might want to use those words for other things. E-procurement was developed on an Oracle platform for those who really want to know. It works best on an Internet Explorer browser, which nobody uses anymore. Luckily, it also works equally well on Chrome, Safari, Firefox, pretty much everything. If you are working in perhaps an older computer and you're finding that it's glitchy or that you're getting kicked out a lot, try it on Internet Explorer. This has become, over the years, this has become less and less of an issue. But this is a system I've been working in for 4 years. It really doesn't fail. So if your computer and e-procurement are having problems, the chances are that it's probably something on your computer's end. This system, knock on wood, has never crashed. Don't use the back button on your browser, which is hard to say. If you do that, what will happen is that e-procurement will pretend that it's still saving your work, but it won't. And when you go to save your work, it will give you an error message. And when you go back in, nothing that you had done will have been saved. And that is really annoying. So if you want to submit multiple applications, say you want to do more than one site, or you want to do 6 sites, you need to set up a unique user account in iSupplier. So say you want to make 4 applications. Don't do 4 iSupplier accounts for your organization. Go within iSupplier, set up unique accounts, user accounts. They have to have a different name, but you can, they have to have a different name. And in fact, here, I'm going to delete this right now because we have actually fixed this, that the e-procurement system is now capable of using the same email address. And so what you can do, you need to have a unique user account with a unique name, but the user accounts can have the same email address. So you can set up your accounts to be named like 1, 2, 3, 4, or whatever. They can all go to the same email address now. That's something that we updated in the system, which is really helpful. The other thing is that that email address needs to be live. We are going to send, procurement's going to send stuff to you, and it's going to send it to that email address. So if you make up the email address, you're going to miss out on any kind of e-procurement stuff that gets sent. I will say ahead of time that e-procurement generated emails are exactly the kind of things that get stuck in people's spam folders. They get stuck in our spam folders here. And so, just please check your spam folders. You might be you might be getting something. Again, you can submit your application and later amend it up until the due date of February 23rd, 2022. So if you're worried about submission, you can submit and then you can pull it back. You can do that up until the due date. After the due date, you can't pull it back and resubmit. I tell people to avoid the rush and possible mishaps by submitting early. Plan on your submission taking 30 to 60 minutes. And I'm going to walk through some slides next about how to do an amendment, how to submit. And you can see it's not a just press send and be happy. It's press send and then 52 steps later. Well, actually 8 steps later, you will then actually have submitted your application. As I said, late applications will not be accepted. If you are having problems with the e-procurement aspect of your application, there is a hotline, or you can call or email me. The hotline is 312-744-4357 or 744-HELP. And that the hotline operates during business hours, Monday through Friday, 9 to 5. You could also, I don't have as much as high a level of access as the people at the hotline do, but I can help you sometimes with some problems. And my number is both at the end of this PowerPoint and in the RFP documents. You can email me, you can call me. I try to be available. And for something like this, probably on the weekends, if you need to get a hold of somebody, I will make that my cell phone available for towards the end there, because I know it's, these things can be really anxiety producing. All right, now if you're a new agency, I just like to do this really quickly. Understand that when you're starting as a new agency, that we're going to require these pieces of information from you. So when you get ready to start your application, make sure that you kind of have these things. We're going to need an article of incorporation or any amended article. We're going to need your IRS affirmation, or your original letter with the IRS FIN number in it, your DUNS number, your CCR number, and a certificate of good standing letter with the state of Illinois. To enter into a contract with the city of Chicago, you must be able to do business. So that means we are unable to accept provisional, so you submitted for your 501c3, or you're waiting to get the certificate, your FIN. We cannot enter into a contract with someone who doesn't have those things signed, sealed, and delivered from the feds. So if that is your case, I highly, highly recommend that you look for a fiscal agent that can apply on your behalf, because if we do run into this, especially with these larger pools, that somebody thinks that they're going to have their 501c3 approved, and then we want to contract with you, but we can't, because that 501c3 is approved and the application was made under your provisional name, which means that we can't, the fiscal agent, if you had a fiscal agent, contract would be in the fiscal agent's name, so we're not able to transfer you to a different agency. So please, 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 if you're kind of in this provisional purgatory, try to find a fiscal agent and apply with them, because if you're awarded, it will save yourself, it takes waiting for the documentation to be coughed up off the table as a potential barrier. So in terms of tech, if you want more technical assistance, again, the helpline, if you're not a helpline or a kind of person, you can email. If you don't want to email us, we do have a lot of training for documents and materials. There's some videos you can watch. I have any number of handouts I can email to people about how to do some very basic processes in e-procurement. If you want to know what else we're doing, go to the DFSS website and look under the alerts section of our website, or I think there's a funding opportunities section as well. We also are on Facebook and I believe Twitter. Other places where you can communicate with us or find out what we're up to. In case anybody didn't know, there's 3 youth RFPs out right now. There's the CYSC one, there's the Summer Youth Employment Program, which I believe is a combination program of the OSC Plus and SYEP. I don't know, Lisa, did you want to chime in on that? And then we also have our Chicago Ability program is up as well, in terms of application, youth-related programming that's on the street ready for you to apply. So now we're going to talk about how to I'm going to walk you very quickly through 2 very common processes. One is how to accept an amendment, and then the other is how to do your submission. So this RFP has already been amended because I uploaded the incorrect webinar information, and so within the first hour, I had to, do an amendment to make that correction. It was not my finest hour. So in this case, the RFP you are interested in has been amended. When you go in to start your application, which you're going to do with this action bar, it says create. You would go to the create quote and hit go. Since there's been an amendment, you're going to be asked to walk through the next couple of steps to acknowledge and accept the amendment. It's very important. The next amendment that we will do will no doubt be to post the questions from this webinar. And it is very important that you understand that with any amendment, because sometimes amendments are for more important, things like you're changing the date or there's a significant change to the scope. All of those things could be the cause for amendments. We like to try to, at DFSS, we really strive to not do those kinds of amendments, but they have happened. So, and furthermore, this procurement system is set up for those kinds of more significant changes in scope or time or whatever. So, in order to go forward, you're going to need to accept the amendment, and part of that acceptance process is acknowledging and taking and attesting that you are taking responsibility for the content of that amendment. And you will see that the City of Chicago does a very, very thorough job making sure that you understand all of this. That you are going to be held responsible for the fact that I had to change the webinar date, or I had to update it to the correct link. So here we are. You're going to, you're going to start. You're going to say it's going to tell you that you are amended and that you have to acknowledge the amendment and submit your response. So if you want to look at the amendment history, you'll click on this blue button here. And then you're going to hit the create quote and go. And then you're going to begin the acceptance and acknowledgement process, which seems very sort of, holistic. So when you hit the create quote button and you hit, go, you're going to get to this page. Anything in the light blue, more or less, is going to take you to something else that you can look at. To review the changes, if you look here, there's the description, which will tell you why this thing was, why the RFP was amended. If you want to review the changes, you're going to hit these little eyeglass buttons. If you want to look at the whole application and download the documents, you're going to hit the document number, which is basically going to take you to the application page. But really what you're going to do is at some point to get to the next stage, you're going to go to the acknowledge amendments and you're going to click on that. That will take you to this acceptance page where you hit this very tiny button that says you accept the terms and conditions of the RFQ and you acknowledge that the changes made to the RFQ document, you acknowledge the changes. So you're going to hit this button, you're going to click on acknowledge, and then you're going to go to this other page, which you're going to confirm that you acknowledge the amendment. All the amendments have been acknowledged. You're confirming that you acknowledged it. No one has coerced you. You're in full capacity of all things amendment oriented. And then you'll hit yes, because why wouldn't you? And that will take you to this next final page where you accept the terms and conditions. And this is the final step in acknowledging and accepting this amendment. Seems like overkill when it's really just a correction on my part about the webinar link. But as I said, it's often for other things. And here, notice there's another tiny box you have to click on before you can go to accept. So that is how you're going to accept an amendment. Next, we're going to talk about how to submit an application. As I indicated before, the application is, it's not just, click send and be gone. It is more like accepting an amendment, except perhaps even slightly more painful. As I said, we love, love, love to see people apply, put in their stuff a day early. It is not because the system is going to crash, but it also means like this is a big applicant pool. There were 171 people who signed up to come to this webinar. I already have 11 or 12 applications started. What you want to do, I'm available, Lisa's available, Evelyn's available, the people at the help desk are available, but you don't want to get yourself in a situation where you are having a problem and you need to have a question answered and you're going to leave it to the last minute. And then because I have had people where, they're trying to get it in, but there's a glitch. They don't understand. They've done something wrong. They didn't give their, present self should give future self the greatest opportunity to succeed. And that means do stuff early so you can have things go wrong and not have it miss your deadline. Because as I've indicated, Once that deadline closes, it is closed and it's not going to reopen most likely. So here we go. So here, when you're ready to submit, and that will be, ideally a day before, start by saving your draft one last time and then click on continue. When you do that, it's going to put you into what the system is then going to go and kind of like scan your whole RFP application and see where it thinks you might have messed up or forgotten something or not done something correctly. So you're going to get a whole bunch of error messages. In this particular application, example, I just have one, but when I've done this before, I get like 4, And we're going to now talk like the 2 most common error messages. You're not going to be able to submit without resolving these error messages. On this one, you must quote at least one line in the RFQ. You'll see here, usually the error messages direct to something left undone in the application. In the last example, the error message indicated the lines have not been filled out. So you can see here, line, and then you look down, there's a tab that says lines. In this case, we require that you do a cost proposal or a budget page that you upload as an attachment. The lines is a placeholder kind of thing that you would need to go into and just put placeholder numbers. We don't use lines as part of our evaluation. It's something that comes into play at the contracts phase, but you can't submit the application without clicking on that page and putting at least one number in one of the lines. So that is one very common error message. Here is one about quote values. A quote value is e-procurement speak for an answer. Application questions are referred to as requirements. Each requirement has a name, and the quote value is the answer that you would provide for, the question. So here, a quote value is required for the requirement first name. You would find the requirement first name, and then you would put in first name, and then that would be that. So once you are done with all of your errors and resolving the errors, you're going to keep, going back to save and hitting continue and getting ready to submit. And when you're done, you're going to get into this. Once your application is free from errors, you are ready to proceed and submit. So at this point, clicking continue should put your application into the review and submit phase, which is indicated by up here. You'll see here, there's the printable view that you can do to get a PDF of what you're going to be submitting. Again, though, just so that I think it's probably nice to have that. And then you're going to, maybe save one last time, and you're going to be able to review in this phase. You're going to be able to review all your data and confirm that it's accurate. Check your attachments, scroll to the bottom, and then scroll all the way down. It's kind of like when you go to vote, you just keep scrolling and scrolling and scrolling and checking or voting, as the case might be, to see all of your responses. And at the very bottom of all of that scrolling, you're going to see the here we go. You're going to see the place for an electronic signature. Be sure to putting your name and title first before you hit this tiny little box, or else you'll get an error message because it likes you to put the name and your title in first before you put the box. I guess it's logical, but I don't know why they should have put the box below. They didn't. And then I couldn't fit this on one screen, but then you would hit submit. And after that, you'll get a submittal confirmation screen. And now eProcurement will send that confirmation within 24 hours of your submission. If you want to know for sure that you did, you can just call or email me, and I can see the minute that you submit, I can see your application, and I am more than happy to confirm that with you if you want to call or email, and I can check real quick and just verify. Sometimes the confirmation email, again, anything from eProcurement tends to end up in people's spam. So you have to check your spam, and it's within 24 hours of your submission. It's not like immediate. If you want immediate, give me a call. I'm more than happy to check. And so that is that is how you would submit an application in eProcurement. I am done talking about e-procurement, but I'm happy to answer questions. And now we're gonna unmute everybody and do questions and answers. I know that Evelyn has been in the chat and has been answering lots of questions for people while we're going, but let's just see if we can open it up for more. And thank you guys so much for your attendance and participation in this. Let's see. I'm unmuting Evelyn and Lisa. Do you wish to unmute at this point? Because I see that you are self-muted. Lisa? So we have lots and lots of questions here. Let's just start with this first. Is this program federally funded, and is indirect cost allowed? Lisa, do you want to take that one?
I pass that one to Evelyn.
So the only reason I haven't provided a response, what we do know is that it is federally funded, but there are still some things that we are finalizing. So I can give a partial answer. So this program is funded by the ARP dollars that is coming from the federal government.
Here is the question: do we need to have a minimum of 20 program participants?
No, in terms of a minimum, you must have at minimum 40 participants. When you increase, if you wish to have more than 40, it should be in increments of 20. So it'll be 40, 60, 80. Don't test my math skills any further than that. You get the idea.
Right. And then here's an awesome question. In-person programming requirement. You stated that programming is expected to be in-person based on CDC guidance and Department of Health. But as it stands, some agencies or organizations have different, in parentheses, stricter in-person work guidelines. If our sites require virtual engagement while the CDC permits in-person engagement, is that okay? That's an awesome question.
That is an awesome question. And there will be certain questions that we have here that I will not be able to answer at this time without seeking advice and approval. That particular one we will address in writing, as we will do all of them. But at this time, I am not able to respond to that.
I know that this question was sort of answered in the questions thing, but I wanted to just, for the target population, what forms or proof of documentation will be considered acceptable? Did you want to quickly go through that?
So just to kind of provide an example, I was looking at just kind of some of the documents we currently look at. So for instance, if we're talking about young people with disabilities, anything like the Social Security disabilities letter that they receive, or as we call it, the SSDI letter, a 504 plan, or an IEP of their current students, are some examples of those types of determination. For youth that are unstably housed and homeless, again, looking for letters like from DHS or a homeless provider, or if they happen to be a CPS student, if they have the STLS designation, usually the case managers at the school will know who those young people are. So if they are comfortable with providing that kind of documentation, then that's perfectly fine with us. As far as English as a second language, self-attestation, and what I mean by that is if you happen to be an organization that's a multicultural organization serving a variety of groups, and you have a questionnaire that asks about English as a second language, I mean, that would be sufficient. I know for CPS, there's actually a questionnaire that they use to give the designation of EL. Some of us may know it as bilingual education because that's how they make that determination for English learners. So that's what the EL stands for. If there's any kind of school record that determines that their English as a second language. And I kind of hesitate as someone who's half Mexican, half Puerto Rican, that if I work at an organization where everybody's Spanish speaking, I will take that as English as a second language. But really looking as a self-attestation, even if it's like on an intake form at your agency, it is a question on the application for CYSC, so we're kind of covered. As far as foster care youth, now we also know they're also referred as youth in care. So if you are a child welfare agency or working with a child welfare agency, a DFSS case manager, usually that referral letter for the program, perfectly acceptable documentation. And again, if there's any kind of record from the school, that would be acceptable. And as far as youth touched by the judicial system, an arrest record, a station adjustment, or a court record, again, that would be allowed as part of documentation. Now for opportunity youth, if they are not in school or working, I would say a self-attestation because that's why they're coming to you, right? They're looking for opportunities to be in a program. This CYSC falls under our youth employment program, so we would treat it as employment. So just make sure that if they are not in school and not working, then this is an opportunity for them to be in the program. So I hope that covers that. And those are just examples of documents we would accept.
Thank you so much. So the other here is when is the FY 2023 RFP expected to come out? This brings up, I would just want to address this more globally. This, as Evelyn responded, this RFP is for 2022 and 2023. Almost all of the contracts that DFSS do are going to be 1 year or 2 year contracts with 1 or 2 year extensions for a total of 3 years of service. And that largely, we don't do RFPs every year if we can possibly help it. They're a big lift for us all. They're a big lift for you. And so this is the time to apply. There, unless you want to wait 2 years. Here we get into some quotes. I just saw like a brief kind of like when I was sort of scanning questions. We're getting into the questions about the timing. Can programs be summer only, or do they have to be running from April to December? And then were some questions also about like if the program, initially this is a year-round program, but we're like starting it not in January, we're starting it in April, and how does that play out? So perhaps you guys can address that topic area.
Sure. The first one about it being, I think you said, can they only apply for summer? Was that what you had said?
Yeah, can programs be summer only, or do they have to run from April to December?
But this particular program, if you apply for Chicago Youth Service Corps, it has to be year-round. This is a year-round program. It is not just for the summer. If you wish to do an only summer type program, you may be interested in reading over the RFP for SYU.
Additionally, here's another kind of related question, which is, can year-round programming be divided into terms, summer, spring, fall, etc., or does it need to meet consecutively throughout the year?
And we saw that one, and both Evelyn and I said, that's interesting. And it's something where the initial response, I can tell you, is the youth need to complete those 400 and, whatever number of hours. We can say for the summer, they should really stick to, for that 6 weeks, for those 6 weeks, 20 hours a week for 6 weeks. The other sections, honestly, that's something we have to look into. But for now, I would say when you're completing this proposal, address it as the full 400 and whatever hours, and going by the table that we provided. But that is a very interesting question.
Here are a number of questions that are, says, did I understand that for FY 2022, the program will run from April through December? Will that reduce the number of hours with a later start date? And then, yeah, so and then, you know, since the project cycle is projected to start in May, then this cycle schedule overlaps with 2023. Is that correct?
So it's not going to overlap with 2023. Each year, at the end of the year, it's going to shut down that year and start anew. There will not be an overlap. In regards to the program not starting this year in January, things will be adjusted. We're coming up with how that adjustment will affect the agencies. But as you're doing this particular proposal, you're writing it as if you're going from a full year, January to December. If you are awarded, when we come and have our orientation, at that time, we will lay out how the program will be adjusted. Since we will not be starting in January, we will be starting later in January.
Some questions about the 40%. So it says, to clarify, the participants of our program have to qualify as 40% of the target population. And then do all the youth need to be in the same single underrepresented population? Like you can only do 40% foster care, 40% English language learners, or can it be a combination?
It can be a combination. That 40%, it could be a combination of all of those requirements and descriptions that are listed.
And organizations supplement wages with their own pay. So like DFSS pays student $15 an hour, and their organization can bump it up to $20 with an extra $5. Is that an hour? Is that acceptable?
That's an interesting question and a very good question. You can supplement. We will only provide you X amount of dollars, the $15 an hour plus the FICA and workers' comp that you list on your budget. Anything above that, that is on the agency if you wish to provide more than what we are offering.
And you would show that in your other share.
Yes, show that in the other share. So here's another good question is, so the 460 hour and the 770 hour requirements that we talked about in one of the screens, have those been shortened or in any way, you know, accounted for in for the FY22 grant year, since we're starting in April? How do we want to, you know, what is that, will those be kind of prorated, I guess?
Well, that refers back to the previous question about, since we're not starting in January, how will that affect the program and about the overlap? If you are awarded, when we have the orientation, we will lay out how it will affect the hours on the program and what that start date is. At that time, we will address that. But when you are completing this particular proposal, you're submitting it for the full 460 hours for the youth. Thank you for reminding me it's 460, and the 770 for the staff.
Then of those 460 hours, do they need to be informal, like group sessions, or can students complete the hourly requirement in independent work with timesheets? And then a follow-up question is, what are the hours required per fiscal year? Okay, so we've already answered that. And then, but what are the, you know, how are those hours supposed to be broken out? Can they be in a formal group session, or can it be more independent work?
When Evelyn and I saw that question, we thought that was interesting. And it is expected that there are cohorts. They are building leadership skills and building relationships, and
Projects for the community.
the projects that they will be working with, they're projects where they're collaborating with their teams. Saying that to say, they can't be individual programs or individual projects that they're doing. They must have this team, this cohort. So you have a cohort of 20. If you as an agency decided with what we are providing for you, you know that cohort of 20, I can break that down of 10 and 10 or groups of 5. But you should not be breaking it down as individual programmatic and allowing them to do these programs by themselves. We're not encouraging that.
Then here's some questions about staffing. So to clarify, we have to find the 2 staff members for this program, or will DFSS help connect us with those youth? And can the staff be current employees, or do we need to hire new staff?
So in terms of your staff, we are anticipating that you will find your staff. We will, if you are in need of assistance, we will try to assist you, but at the end, you are responsible for hiring and recruiting the staff members. We will assist, but it will not be the sole responsibility of DFSS to find your staff people. And the second part of the question, can you repeat that, please?
Was basically, can you use existing staff? Or do you have to hire new?
If they're able to, when you say existing staff, if that staff is able to dedicate 770 hours with these youth, you can have existing staff by all means, as long as they're dedicating their time during those hours that the youth are in program. That staff person is dedicated to that, not any other project, but at that time with those youth, they provide that dedicated time to them.
Here's an interesting question. Can we get a copy of the DFSS tool even if we weren't awarded a grant? I'm assuming that you mean by tool that you mean the evaluation tool, and the answer to that is no. Those are not public documents. We provide you with the selection and evaluation criteria, and that is all. The evaluation tools are not public. Then let's see. Will there be a webinar for the summer youth employment RFP? Yes, there will be a webinar for the summer youth employment RFP in merely a few hours. Let's see. Will we receive a cash advance, or does the agency need to have a certain amount of reserve set up for payroll prior to the start of the grant? Will this be reimbursement, or will you be handling the payroll directly?
Thank you for asking that question.
Yeah, that's a great question.
Yes. 2 answers. For the first part, this is a reimbursement program. There are no cash advances for this program. That's the first answer. Second answer, I believe it was about payroll. DFSS does not provide payroll services for the Chicago Youth Service Corps. The agency is responsible for the payroll of the staff and the youth under this program. Was there another section to that, Julia?
There was talking about the cash advance, and then, yeah, will you be a payroll, or do you have to demonstrate a reserve? And then the reimbursement aspect, all City of Chicago DFSS contracts at this point are reimbursement. We don't do cash advances to date. And will we be handling the payroll directly? So
Oh, we are not handling. I said that quickly because I know I mentioned it before. Just a few minutes.
So, just wanted a clarification for the recruitment process. Can we recruit our students, or do you help us place students for our opportunity, or can it be a mix of our students and DFS students too?
Wonderful question. The 60% of youth in the recruitment can come from your organization. You are recruiting those youth. The 40% will come from the online application in a lottery. So we will provide the 40%. Of course, if you have a concern with providing your 60%, we can increase your number of the lottery applicants. We can assist you with that percentage as well.
We have a location in Pilsen Little Village, but I don't see it in your chart of zones. Which zone would it be under?
So the zones are broken up by community areas. Little Village and Pilsen are neighborhoods. So you will not see those two listed in the zones under the community areas. The best way for me to answer that is to say, if you put your address into Google and ask, what is the community area, it will tell you.
Most of the time, it ends up being North or South Lawndale, I believe, but you should check for sure. How long will it take for organizations to know if they are accepted or funded? Well, we would like our contracts to start on April 1st. So I think we would like to tell people we'll be trying to get back to people mid to late March about that. Your applications are due on the end of February. It takes us a minute to evaluate and make decisions. Here, will you have specific COVID restrictions? Will students need to be vaccinated? If they don't want to be vaccinated, how do we handle those students?
So in regards to that question, which apparently all questions are interesting, that is also a very interesting question. And that is one of the questions that before I answer, I'm going to check with our management team for that response.
We partner in multiple equity zones, and our CBO and school partners provide space/physical address in kind. What specific documentation do you require as proof of partnership and physical location? Must each location enroll a minimum of 20 youth, or can the total enrolled/employed youth be distributed against all partner sites? So in the equity zones. So in this case, the 2 high schools and 3 CBOs in multiple equity zones. If they wanted to do a total, does each zone have to do 20 kids, or can they spread the 20 kids across sites in multiple zones?
So Julia, I'm going to ask you, because I missed part of that, just on the question part, if you can repeat that, please.
Sure. I think the question is talking about how there's an agency that has up to 5 sites in multiple equity zones. If they only, their question is, must each location enroll a minimum of 20 youth, or can the total enrolled/employed youth be distributed across all partner sites? So I have, 5 possible sites in an unspecified but multiple number of equity zones. Does each site have to do 20 kids? Or can I have, 5 kids at each site? How does that work?
So Evelyn and I are going to tag team this. The first part is, you said multiple zones. So as we know, if you're applying for multiple zones and you're in one zone, say the West, that one zone, if you only have one organization or yourself that you're working with a physical address, the minimum number of youth has to be 40. Because each application, remember, the minimum number is 40. It is 20 when you increase from the 40, meaning if you do 40 and you wish to increase your numbers, your increase must be in increments, I'm sorry, lost for it, increments of 20. So let's say, using that example, you're popular, you have a lot of sites. You're going to go after all 6 zones. One application in this particular zone, you know you're going to have 80 youth, but those 80 youth will be at multiple sites. One, you need to have proof of physical address.
Yeah, a linkage agreement or current MOU of a provider or partner you're working with or subcontracting with.
And we make sure, we're going down this path correctly. So you're telling us, I'm going to do 80 youth, but hey, I'm going to have more than one site because my site isn't big enough to hold all of those 80. But when I do this budget for this program, it's going to be one budget. And I'm going to let you know, Lisa, I'm doing the West Zone, and I happen to have agency backspace, agency shift control, agency caps, locks, obviously I'm looking at a keyboard, and agency tab. And I have memorandums of understanding from each of them that says, yes, we're going to do this and we're going to help them do whatever program. And here are the addresses that we have proof that we're in that location, whatever. So yes, you can cover those 80 youth in that one zone. And if you're saying, I'm going to push them out to these other groups, that is possible. But for each application, for each zone, one application. Minimum, each zone, 40 youth, that is. As you increase it, increase by increments of 20. We will write this up and respond to all of the questions that are here. But we will also, just letting you know, we will write this and add it into our amendment. And I hope I answered that.
So will accepted agency programs be completely funded by DFSS? And then there was another question in here about, is there like a match requirement?
First one, will it be completely funded? This program, we will provide the funds for this program. And I have to add in there that if you have an organization that says, I wish to help you and support CYSC, that's between you and that organization. And if you wish to do additional things for our young people, that is fantastic. And someone else is paying for it, wonderful.
And is there a match requirement?
If you could hear her.
Sorry about that. No, there is not a match requirement for this program. But again, a reminder that these are ARP dollars. So it's the recovery funds. And it has many acronyms, but no matching required.
If we serve youth who are parenting, how do we address youth who often also need childcare in order to work?
Honestly, I saw that question, and again, I thought that was interesting. and I appreciate you asking it, that is something that the agency and the young person would need to discuss and figure out whether or not the agency has any wraparound services that can support childcare. By all means, you can always tap into us to see if we, meaning the city, Department of Family and Support Services, if we have any recommendations that we can suggest for that. But there's nothing within this program that addresses directly if you're parenting and you need, and you have a child, what is it that you are to do?
Let's see. This program, so just a couple of quick ones. Will this program cancel Chicagobility? No, it will not. The Chicagobility RFP is on the street, and the webinar for that is tomorrow.
And also, Chicagobility serves 14 and 15-year-olds. This program serves 16 through 24.
Clarify, do we have to have a physical brick and mortar building to apply for this opportunity? Yes.
Evelyn and I, yes, we agree with you, Julia. Our first thought was we need more information to really answer that to the fullest. My initial thought is there needs to be a place where they're gathering. So somebody needs to assist you with a brick and mortar location that you can gather the young people. And that's where you will also need that linkage agreement.
Let's see. There's a couple of different like e-procurement questions in here, which I think I will make a note and just reach out to those individuals rather than take up time here. We can also address those, have those instructions in the amendment. If students require training, does that count towards their hours worked? Also, is there a maximum of how many hours of training or workshops that you can participate in versus number of hours?
That's another question where I would need more. From what you gave us, what we will respond to is the training are the hours. If they're, it's almost like when I say need more, what type of training are we talking about? You may have in there training for how to dress for interviews or how to mock interviews. That's a training, and that's acceptable under this program, and that is part of their hours that they're paid for.
Confirming that the minimum number of students to participate per applicant is 40.
Yes, confirmed. It is 40.
Will this program help connect students with a language barrier, or is minimal English required?
If you have a young person with a language barrier, that I will say is something that the agency would have to make the determination, meaning if you have a young person that you hired that basically English is the second language and they really need a translator, then the agency will need to provide that translator. When you hired them, you took on that responsibility. Are there ways to, say, refer youth to another organization that is in this program? That could be very possible. That's able to provide that service.
As a follow-up or a related question is, are undocumented youth eligible for CYSC program from a payment standpoint?
Just to be clear, this is a federally funded program that pays youth wages, and notice the emphasis on wages. For this program, youth need to complete the I-9 form, so just like any of us who are seeking employment. So to answer the question, youth that are undocumented cannot be in the program if they cannot produce the documentation to work. However, is if you have a young person that is DACA confirmed, DACA status that not that you're in the renewal process, but you actually have your DACA up to date, DACA will allow you to work. So you do get a working social, you have your ID and things like that. That is allowable. But unfortunately, because it's a federal program, you do need a social security number and basically your documentation to work.
Let's see. Oh, well, here's some interesting ones. So just to kind of clear, I see a lot of questions about our other opportunities. So there is going to be, we have 3 RFPs out right now for CYSC, which is this program, the Summer Youth Employment Program, or SYEP, and Chicagobility. All of those are 3 separate RFPs with there's 3 separate programs, and they require 3 separate applications. So we are not answering questions for those other program models. Those have separate RFPs, or separate webinars rather, that are happening later on today and tomorrow. And I think there was something about will there be a separate RFP for One Summer Chicago if we do not get accepted into this program? Yes, there will. We're not rolling over one program model into another program model. You would have to make 3 separate applications to apply for all the different funding and programs that we have available right now for youth. The contracts will run. They're going to, all of these contracts are slated to start April 1st. As I said before, there's going to be, we go for a 2-year contract with a 1-year extension, or a 1-year contract with a 2-year extension. That's, based on our funding availability and contract with performance. So those are kind of how we're going forward with those opportunities. Here, will there be a let's see, would an organized voter registration initiative meet the expectations of a capstone project?
Say that again, please.
Would an organized voter registration initiative meet the expectations of a capstone project?
I would say yes. And that, of course, we go over additional information when we actually have our sessions to find out more about the program and the time span and the expectations and so forth. But overall, yes, that's part of civic engagement.
What is the likelihood of new agencies receiving a contract? Do you have a large number of agencies who have implemented this program and will possibly reapply? Well, we don't know who will reapply. that's up to the people who have. That's up to the person who would make the application. But Lisa, Evelyn, what do you guys have to say on that?
Ditto to what you said.
Yeah, I was just going to say.
There is information specifically in the RFP about the number of contracts that we've, that have historically occurred, and the number of contracts that we are anticipating making. I don't have those numbers at my fingertips, but all of the RFPs that we have out do address the number of contracts, the size of the contract, and how many contracts, if it's an existing program, how many contracts are currently out there. So I think you should be able to do the math. We have no idea who is going to reapply. If that is a way of, nobody is grandfathered in. So if you have an existing contract and that contract is coming to an end, you do need to reapply. You don't just automatically get a new contract, regardless of how well or not well you're doing in your current program. Everybody needs to reapply. This actually every year when we do repeat programs like this, but SYUP, there are always people who somehow think that they're just going to magically keep getting their contract regardless of without making a reapplication, and they tend to be very disappointed when they find out that they needed to put in an application to have continued funding. Let's see. Do we submit an annual budget even though year one will be shorter, or should the budget reflect April to December? What is your preference on that?
They submit an annual budget.
All right, so a 12-month budget, and we will figure it out how to prorate it for the 9-month contract. Can students do more than 20 hours a week during the summer?
No, they cannot.
They cannot. I guess the only thing would be if you had somebody else paying those wages, would they be able to do more than 20 hours a week?
Someone else was paying them?
Yes.
Sure can. They're not my worker at that point. But yes, if someone else is paying them, they can do additional.
So if we have a physical address in one equity zone, can we hire youth to work in another equity zone where we also have a physical address? We have 9 community health centers and would like to submit one application for the entire group.
Interesting question. And that is going to fall under, let me look into that one and reply in writing.
Can you share more on the city lottery component of participant selection?
Well, what I can share just from what the basics of what you're asking, the lottery system it's a system through our data system, and it will shoot out, excuse me for lack of a better term, it will shoot out youth to that particular agency. We let it know this agency is receiving from this particular zone, or they're looking for, that are between the ages of 16 to 24. Once we put those criteria in the system automatically will, as we say, continue to fill your bucket as you're pulling out. And once you reach your 40%, it will stop putting youth in that bucket, but it will just arbitrarily shoot out youth into your bucket, quote unquote. And when you interview the youth, you let them know what it is you're offering, what type of program you have. It's basically the interview. You and or the youth will determine, no, I'm not interested in that, or yes, I am interested. I would like to proceed with your process of placement.
So we're coming up against the end of our allotted webinar time, but I did want to just maybe do a couple questions. So within the budget designated for staff, can we utilize medical dental benefits in addition to FICA and workers' comp?
So you're asking for the staff?
Yes.
Can you also pay the staff medical, dental, and so forth in addition to the workers' comp?
Yeah, is that allowable cost?
If you're taking it out of your allocated admin funds, then the answer is yes.
Can we access your DFSS recruitment platform?
So what's interesting about the platform So there's a workflow to the youth. So what happens is young people will apply through the Chicago Youth Service Corps website. So if those that are familiar with the One Summer Chicago, it's actually the same thing. We activate one for One Summer Chicago, and this past year in 2021, we activated one for the Chicago Youth Service Corps. So what happens is young people will apply online, and then once an agency is funded with DFSS, they will have access to a system called CitySpan Yes, which stands for Youth Employment System. And at that point, the awarded agency would do a search. So Evelyn Benitez applied for Service Corps. They would type in my name and my information would be in the system. But at that point, that happens once an agency is on contract with us, and that's how they have access to the youth. It is also how we do the lottery for the program. So you'll have your 60% choice. You have to know who your young people are that apply, and the 40% will already be in the system, as we refer to it as a randomized queue. But that you only have access to that once you're awarded and you work with me and folks here at DFSS.
As one final, we do have some extra questions that we're not going to be able to address in this webinar because we are running out of time. And we have another webinar coming up for the SYEP program. But one last question that I did want to have answered. We will answer all the questions that you guys asked as part of the amendment. Additionally, you really can reach out to email if you really need an answer right now. The other question is that with enrollment, if they're saying, do all youth have to come from the equity zone that your program is located in? And the 40% that comes from the lottery, will these youth participants meet the target population criteria as well? So it's, our physical building is on the border of a zone. Some of our kids come from the next zone. Can I enroll them in my, can I enroll kids from two different zones? And then what about the 40%? And do they meet the target population criteria?
So due to the fact that we are at 12, and that is a question, and interesting, and I thank you for that question. That's not something we had initially discussed in our question sessions with myself and Evelyn. We will discuss that and provide it in writing by the time that the amendment for this goes out.
Well, so thank you guys so much. Thank you both to Lisa and Evelyn. I'm so excited to hear about this particular program. I always like to see year-round stuff for youth. Just makes me personally happy. I thank all of you for your attendance. And your very good questions, which we will be putting into an amendment shortly. As I have said before, the PowerPoint will be loaded onto the DFSS website underneath the CYSC page that we have started there. And when I get it formatted and processed, there will also be a link to the recording of this webinar, so you can relive the glory. That will be posted on the DFSS YouTube channel, and the link will be on the DFSS website as well. I thank you guys so much for your participation and your attendance, and we look forward to hearing from you further and reading your applications. If you're going to be joining us for the SYEP webinar, we'll see you in an hour. Thank you so much.